All right, UFC 210 Airport Shuttle wrap-up. We're going to do this after a couple different big events. We'll maybe get a fan to do UFC 211, so if you're in Cleveland, hit me up on Twitter if you want to drive us to the airport. Just going to get together with somebody, a fighter or a coach or something from the show and drive them to the airport. So look who we got today. Dominick Cruz, dude.
Brought me coffee. What a nice guy. The thing is, I got a 6-hour flight, so I couldn't take him up on it, but very kind of you.
You said you'd literally kill somebody if you drank the coffee?
Well, you know what happened?
You said literally.
I would say literally with my words.
Right.
And that's sometimes more painful than the actual ass whipping.
Yeah, ask Uriah.
Well, I didn't say that, you did.
I said that.
I've actually been very kind to him with my words recently, so.
Recently?
Yes, of course. But I mean, what else would I do?
Yeah, true. All right, fights last night. DC's your guy. And
yeah, what do you mean by that?
He's your friend.
Yeah, he is my friend, but, you know, I got a lot of friends in this sport, believe it or not.
Yeah, I buy that. You're actually a nice guy. It's kind of an act, this mean Dom thing. But what was not the weirdest? There was a lot of weird stuff. But what was kind of the coolest or most interesting part of the night for you?
That's a good question. For me, you know, I'd have to say the coolest thing was seeing John Jones out in the stands and DC winning the title and the look on John's face, to be honest, because I'm a you know, champion, former champion. I've lost it, I've earned it, I've done all that, and I know where John is to an extent because he's out and he knows he should be and can be competing. And to see the look on his face when DC won the title and talking to him and he can't do anything about it, I know how that feels. It's such a restricting feeling. You literally feel like you're getting choked in your seat. Your whole body's being sucked into the seat.
Because you want to be able to do something?
You want to compete. You want to compete so bad. And you can't, for whatever reason. Mine was his was his, but it doesn't matter. It's the same situation to an extent. And so I'm excited to see when that fight finally happens, because I'm telling you, this is only making the fight that much better.
Yeah, it's true. I found this fight fascinating. Did you think that AJ moving in and getting chest to chest with DC was just sort of his mind making choices he didn't want to make? Or do you think he was trying to introduce grappling in early to make Dan buy that was a threat? What do you think was happening there?
Well, I mean, if you really want to know what I think that AJ was knowing he was going to be out of there. And if he could knock him out like he can quickly, he'd absolutely do that. But if he starts getting a little bit tired and starts feeling like, well, I might not get him when I want to, I just don't want to get out of here with a broken nose, a busted eye, a cut down the middle of my face. So let me just keep this fight close quarters so we're not just swinging haymakers at each other. And you know, he said it himself, there's nothing fun about this. There's nothing, he doesn't want that type of fight. He didn't want it that night. Maybe he did in the past, but last night he did not want that type of fight. And in order to have a fight where you're just never going to stop, you have to already have that predetermined in your mind. And AJ said it himself that he was already ready to get out at that point. So to me, he just wanted to get in there, do the best he could to get the knockout. If it didn't happen, he was staying as safe as he could from a lot of damage. And I think that's what he did. And he even broke DC's nose and took almost no damage himself.
Yeah, I think for a lot of people, when they hear this part of the conversation, which I agree 100% with, they think that this was a decision that you made, like, do you want to go to the airport? Oh, Robin said he's going to give me a ride. Let's go to the airport. Do you want a coffee? I would not like a coffee, thanks. They think it's a choice, but it may not be a conscious choice, right? He went in there and at different points in the day and in the minutes before and on the walk to the cage was going to fight out in the open field the way he had planned. But your mind kind of overrides itself, right? Is that accurate? That it's not a binary A or B that I'm either going to strike in the open field or grab a hold of you. It can, your brain can make that choice for you without your conscious decision.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're moving on instinct, that's what you're saying, but instincts, if you're always listening to your instincts, well, you're never going to be in there in the first place, because every instinct in your life tells you, please don't go into this octagon and fight somebody in a cage in front of a billion people. So your instincts are always telling you not to do something. So he has to make the conscious decision that this is the way I want to fight at this moment, because he's a world champion caliber fighter, and that's what we do, is we make decisions, and we fight off our natural fears. So whether he meant to grab him or not, he made the conscious choice that he wanted to grapple with DC, and I think it's because DC hits hard as well. I mean, I don't care if Rumble hits harder, DC still hits extremely hard. So he's not trying to get hurt, and I think it was that simple. I think he didn't want to get hurt. I didn't want to take any damage. He pretty much said that at the end of the fight. So for me, he told the story more than I'm saying anything. Yeah. He said it. And I think he definitely had a conscious decision to grapple. But I think that was just to keep from taking damage. That's it.
Do you remember a period 2 years ago, 5 years ago, where you weren't, now you're self-aware. So you look at yourself from a third person and study why you do the things that you do. Do you remember a period when you didn't do that?
No, unfortunately, my brain's always worked that way. It's kind of annoying, but
it's an advantage.
It can also be a curse, you know? So I tend to overthink some things in regular life that I don't need to. It can ruin relationships outside of the fighting world all the time, the way I think. But it's extremely good for a combat sport.
Yeah.
So it helps me bask in one area, and in other areas I have to harness it and try to keep it under control, so I don't, overthink situations I don't necessarily need to. I mean, every one of us has gifts and curses.
And sometimes they're the same thing.
Exactly, that's my point, right? So it's like, what can you really do? You just got to kind of flow with it the best you can.
So that kind of moment where you make certain choices, you make them sometimes anticipating the consequences or the outcome. So AJ instinctively is thinking about damage or what could happen, but truthfully, the counterintuitive choice is also often the better choice. If he stood in the open field and fought Dan, he may have had a better result, finished Dan and not had to take as much damage as he took in round 2. You know what I mean? Sometimes that thinking about the outcome, the consequences, the why, gives you the wrong choice, because Dan was nervous going in. Luke said so, he said so.
Of course. They all are.
Yeah, of course. But you could see him kind of, as soon as Anthony kind of grappled with him, you could see him kind of release that breath like, oh, this is what I was looking for, and he gave it to me. And so in Anthony looking to have kind of less chaos or less damage or less risk, he actually gave himself more risk.
Well, realistically, you got to remember this too. We don't know what Anthony put into camp, being as he was already on his way out. And from, if you don't like training, you don't like any of that stuff, why would he do it before this fight? So, not saying he didn't do it. I'm sure he did the best he could, but we saw him get tired after a round like he did the first fight. So he probably didn't put in a crazy difficult training camp. That being said, that's exactly when these types of situations happens, when you're not prepared. And what I mean by that is you can have a game plan, but you're going to go to your natural inhibitions because you're tired and you're not prepared. So instead of going against what your body's telling you, you don't have that tool because you didn't train it to that extent. So without that tool in training camp, without pushing yourself to the extreme, close to death limits on several occasions, then you don't know what you're capable of, and you'll go straight back to your natural inhibitions, which in Anthony's case would be grappling. He started out wrestling. Regardless of what his path to winning was for this fight, if you're not in shape, if you're not prepared for a certain style of fight, your body's just going to naturally go to where you're comfortable. And Rumble did that. I don't think he was like, I can't win here. He was just fight or flight. He was in the moment. He was reacting because, that's what his body wanted to do at that point. And the only time you see guys, it kind of gives an example, the only time you see guys go against what they want to do naturally and stick to a game plan is when they've trained themselves so hard that they can listen to their mind and not their body telling them to stop doing something when it's uncomfortable. And that takes cardio, that takes testing yourself in camp. And I would say that probably, my guess would be, Anthony didn't quite do that to the extent he has in some of his past fights earlier on in his career. And that being said, it created a wrestling grind when he probably should have stayed striking.
All right, Weidman and Mousasi, weird fight. We didn't get to hear the commentary, so I don't know what your take was on all of it. But one thing, a lot of the times you see something happen. A ref does something, ice is spilled, judges make a bad choice, whatever.
ISIS?
ISIS.
No,
Ice.
yeah. ISIS,
Ice is spilled.
Oh,
yeah,
ice is spilled.
Ice is spilled, yeah.
Freaked
yeah.
me out, man. I just
yeah,
went
Rogan.
on a USO tour.
Yeah, Rogan freaked out when ice was spilled that time too. But I get your point. How was the USO tour?
It was amazing. Yeah, it was awesome. It was a life experience. You learn a lot. You learn a lot what troops are doing for us, and I know you hear that a lot, and you're like, yeah, troops are doing so. But when you're there, the energy that you just feel in the air when you land in one of the most lethal war zones in the world right now, I can't put into words. So it was a life-changing experience.
Cool. Yeah, you also, it must be weird to suddenly see, oh, right, every minute of their day they're away from their families, from everything, living in this entirely foreign universe.
Yeah, and people go, oh, Dom, you did a great thing going out there for them and putting on it. I went to each place and we do a show to try to bring them back to home for a minute. But realistically, to me, I can't even pat myself on the back. When you go out there, I was out there one day in each location, 8 different locations. I mean, it was a lot of traveling, 100 hours of flying in a C-17, 26,000 miles in 8 days, 8 different locations to visit these military stations and troops all over the world. I'm there one day. They're there for years at a time away from their family members. No Wi-Fi. Can't communicate with anybody. No social media like everybody's using. No television. It's like being on The Ultimate Fighter.
For years, getting shot.
Getting shot at and running from bombs. It's not a game. And it's very serious.
It's still really thoughtful and cool to go leave your girl and your family and do it.
Well, you just do what you got to do. And it's not even about me and, leaving family or leaving anything. It's about the troops. That's what the whole thing was for. It's not, and it really has nothing to do with me except for that I could give them, a little piece for one little chunk of time.
Cool. So Weidman and Mousasi. What I was kind of getting at is when suddenly you have a ref error or a weird occurrence or a bad judge or a foul or something, that becomes the entire narrative. That's all anybody's going to talk about today. Oh, was the hand down? That ref was bad. But 7 minutes of cool combat took place. Do you know what I mean? And often it becomes everything that's discussed and remembered and debated becomes only about that weird moment. Do you ever notice that?
Well, yeah. I definitely noticed that. Yeah, that's the world we live in, though. People choose what they want to lock onto, and they hold on to that. It's just, you can't control it. Yeah. But what can we really say? I mean, are you surprised that that's what everybody's holding on to?
No, I'm not. And I'm not necessarily, I don't want to be a complainer either. When reality of life is the thing that it is, you can sit around and complain about it, or you can pivot off it and figure out how to live around it.
Okay.
So what we can do is actually talk about the fight.
Right.
So round one, I was kind of surprised at how, I shouldn't be surprised. Weidman has become very good at kind of playing with open air. He did it with Machida. Being able to make the guy who makes people miss. You obviously know something about that. And he was making Mousasi miss, lean in, drawing him out in the open space. You saw Mousasi kind of biting down and throwing with extra power. It was a beautiful round, I thought, for Chris.
Yeah, no, well, the key is fakes. So fakes set up Chris's offense, and the reason why Chris is able to fake and get Mousasi to react is because of the wrestling. Mm-hmm. So the wrestling and the thought of wrestling and the thought of the shot forces Mousasi to really try to pull that shot out of Weidman. So he's throwing as hard as he can, setting his feet ready to counter when Weidman comes at him. But anybody who's throwing as hard as they can to counter something, that can be beaten with feints. And that's what Weidman did. He faked a shot, threw some punches, faked a shot, went back to the shot, sucked up,
and made him
was able to get the job done that he needed to.
Made him bite down and be attached to the ground, which allowed the high crotch to keep happening.
Yep, and that was a high crotch, yes. what a lot of people don't know is a high crotch is not a single leg or a double leg. It's actually a setup. So it's not one or the other. It's both, because you can transition. You can dump it like you would a single leg by moving your head to the inside. You can dump it and lift like Daniel Cormier does and Cain Velasquez do.
Where they kind of like make a shelf.
They dump.
Yeah.
No, they dump down, and then you get in the groin and you lift the groin and you lift the leg out, and then they flip this way. And he did it. Dan Henderson. DC did Dan Henderson the same move to Alexander Gustafsson.
Yeah,
Same
which
move.
is crazy.
And then you can also grab with your head on the outside, high crotch, transition to a double. So it's a really effective shot.
Yeah, it was cool. So commentary now, you love doing it. You love analyzing fighting. It's made you a better fighter. It's made you think differently. You enjoy the process, right?
Well, I've had a lot of jobs, Robin, like the worst jobs on earth. Like I've been a janitor. I've dug holes for $6 an hour at 5 in the morning in Tucson, Arizona, 120-degree heat. I've painted roofs. I've worked fast food. I've been a telemarketer, outbound calls. I mean, you name it, I have done it. So to say, do I love my job? Well, it's the best job I've had so far, other than fighting. And you know, people go, "Man, you're so natural at it. It seems so easy for you."
I don't think that.
And you know, well, to an extent, I kind of agree with people. Believe it or not,
the work is natural to you. I think doing the work is natural,
Yes.
but I don't think this comes natural. I think you just work like crazy.
I have. You're right, because I'm not necessarily. I've had to work at putting myself out there and just doing this and opening up and letting people have their opinions about me and being okay with it. But really, it's just a matter of being able to say, I fought in the octagon for 25 minutes. I could pretty much do anything on earth if I put my mind to it. And once I did that and thought that and know that, yes, the job is fairly simple. I hate to tell you.
Now it is.
When you think about I have a choice. You know, and I love fighting, so that's why I'm still doing it. I don't have to do it. I enjoy doing it, and I think that's why I've been good at it.
So I do commentary too. I did commentary in Montreal on Friday night. I'm going to Russia this week to do some.
You've also done Shuttle. You've done a lot of commentary.
I love doing it. I love it.
Yeah.
I feel like, and I noticed that I think you think the same way, is that there's this inclination that people have when they hear people use certain words, language, terminology, that they feel a default that you just use them forever. But language evolves like anything else. And there's something about fighting where if you don't innovate the thinking and the language, we'll use the term ground and pound for the rest of existence, or we'll use the term scramble, or we'll just try to, break things into that is takedown defense, that is a takedown, and it'll become real compartmentalized. Are you noticing that? Are you thinking that way, that the language has to change and you change the language?
Well, maybe. I don't really think about it because I just use the words that I use when I compete with my teammates.
That's cool.
And when I talk to Eric, my coach. So we talk and we try to break down the language to express it to the team and try to explain what I'm teaching guys. So when you do that, and I've been teaching since I started this sport. Most fighters start teaching because that's how we make our living, to pay dues to the gym and to get through this career. So I've been teaching my whole life martial arts. So after a while, you start learning how to explain things.
We're at the airport.
We're here. I made it. Thanks for
man.
the talk, man.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it was really good hanging.
Pleasure.
Yeah. 5-hour flight. You didn't have coffee. You're not going to kill anyone.
Nope, no coffee. Not going to kill anybody. Appreciate it. I'm sorry I had to turn down your coffee, but now I'm going to pass out on the flame.
And somebody's going to live.
Well, I'm gonna say kind gestures to as many people today as I can. By the way, your hair looks great.
Thanks, man. Cheers.